Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining the rescheduled webinar from yesterday. Apologies for the technical problems we had, but hopefully everything will go to plan today. Hopefully everybody can hear me and you can see my screen, which is currently the title screen of Stay Cyber Assured and Compliant. I'll just give it a few more seconds just to make sure everybody can see that. Please drop me a question in the question box if you can't see that, and then we'll get started in a moment. Thank you. Okay, it looks like everybody can see the screen, so we'll get going. So, by introduction, my name is Chris Booth. I work for ITHealth. I've been in healthcare IT now for many years, and today I want to present to you a solution we've been working on for the last 2 to 3 years. ITHealth is a business completely focused on the NHS and healthcare in the UK, and we have a combination of solutions. One we're going to talk about today, our assurance dashboard, and we have other solutions that we also bring and integrate from other partners. But today we want to focus in on getting this kind of assurance level built up for you and how we can help you do that. In terms of a starting point, I just wanted to briefly talk about what assurance is and kind of what we're referring to here. And this is really about ensuring that you have a level of confidence or certainty in your network. And that may be something that troubles you today, or it may be something that you're feeling more confident about. But really, it's part of your wider governance. And that governance includes both reporting, which is internal, and reporting that to internal bodies, but also externally as well. And we all know that there's more and more requirements to report outside of the organisation. And we're going to cover some of those as we go through the presentation. In terms of where we find the dashboard in use today, over the last 2.5 years, we've now managed to get close under 100 trusts using the dashboard, and they cover a wide range of different types of organisations, some of which you can see on the screen. Most of those are happy to talk to you and give you their own benefits rather than kind of what we say, great to get it from peers in the marketplace. We've also been able to build up quite a lot of case studies. And again, these are all available. We can issue these, but also we've got a couple of video case studies and testimonials. Mike Press in Nottinghamshire and Richard Wakefield in the Manchester area, both CTOs in their organisations. And again, they articulate the story very well about where the dashboard has come from and how we've arrived at the way we've arrived at today. We really want to get into some of the real key questions around assurance and getting this single view, and really what we're trying to drive at is compliance around assurance, around your cyber and your IT estate, and holistic view, but also one that's truthful and one that you can rely on completely, both for your own internal reporting and for your operational day-to-day business, but also to say that external requirement as well. And really, when we started out on this journey, this is kind of what we were faced with, and this is a real life diagram that was presented to us. And one of the organisations that was kind of at the forefront of helping us to put this together said, we have this problem. We've got all of this software, all this hardware, interrelationships, as we can see here, what we call the spaghetti mess. And we have a number of tools in this table on the right-hand side here, all of which seem to give us conflicting information. Some of these you probably will recognise. They're all very valuable tools in their own right, but actually sometimes they can conflict in terms of the information that you're trying to get at. And the majority of these also use an agent, which again can cause issues from time to time. So how did we address this, and how did we resolve this, and how did we come up with something that meant that people weren't using spreadsheets or VLOOKUPs and the like? But in addition to that, we also found that people were starting to face issues around external reporting. So DSPT has become a primary route of external reporting now. But in terms of other things, we're aware of CareCERTs, and we're going to go into those in much more detail. Things like NIS regulations around core infrastructure, and then of course Cyber Essentials Plus as well. But it's all about trying to create something that gives you this access to information at hand in a live way and allows you to report on those in a simplified way. And really what we've done over time is to build out how we can respond to those in what is a live dashboard, and just some good indicators of that. The NIS requirements around the good practice indicators and the cyber assessment frameworks is one thing, but more importantly, DSPT. Within DSPT, having done the assessment, and the document you can see there at the bottom of the screen is something we put together and we keep refining. We're now saying that 81% of the cyber-related mandatory requirements can be met by the dashboard. And what I mean by that is information that's in the dashboard that is being collected from your estate is then able to be surfaced out in a variety of different ways to allow you to submit your submissions with that information. But bear in mind, that's live information, as we will see shortly. So again, really, really powerful statement there. But at the same time, within the same dashboard, we are automating the CareCERT process. And again, I don't know how you do that today, whether it's a fully manual process or a semi-automated process, but we'll share with you how we automate the CareCERT process and take as much of the pain away from that as we possibly can. At the same time, via a single click approach, we're going to provide full visibility of patching and update. And again, you may have tools that do that today, or we can correlate that, or we can look for gaps. And at the same time, again, single click into a view, we're going to look at monitoring antivirus and ATP, encryption status, etc., global vulnerabilities. And this is all about what's going on with those endpoints, whether it be a PC, a laptop, a mobile, a switch, etc. We wanted to look at all those assets across your estate. And of course, as we've already mentioned, we're trying to address these initiatives that are out there, which kind of bring more and more workload onto existing teams that are already stretched. And the key thing for us is that we put it all into a single dashboard, as we're going to see shortly. It's important to see a single dashboard, because what that then means is you've got the ability to then share those views in an appropriate way with stakeholders, if need be, in a read-only format, but more importantly within teams. And a really, really powerful story is from an existing user. It's been using the dashboard now for a year. They have a monthly cyber assurance team that meets, and they were all coming to the table with different versions of the truth: the server team, the infrastructure team, the desktop team, the cyber team. And then there was a debate about what the reality was of what's going on. What they now do is they'd still bring the reports, but they come from that single point. They're all looking at their own view of their own environment. There's a server, desktop infrastructure maybe, but they all come and look at the same server. And if there's a debate about something, they can go and look at that particular device or the area of interest they need to within the dashboard. As I say, it's live. So what do we have? We have a live dashboard that sits in your estate on a server, virtual or physical. That's running 24/7, 365. It's scanning your network in an agentless manner using industry standard tools and calls, and it brings back all that information, and we're going to see that in a bit more detail shortly, and places it into a structure whereby we can then apply assessments of vulnerabilities, etc. We can then surface that information out, and that's sitting there. And it's a dynamic dashboard, as we will find. In addition to that, we also have a monthly management report. It's an executive summary that we send out. We don't take anything away from the organization. Those reports are created on the server, and they're effectively emailed directly to the nominated people. So again, it's a sanity check of where you are on a monthly basis. We continue to refine these reports, and it's now fair to say that 95% of the roadmap that we have around the dashboard is made up of users coming to us with ideas. And obviously that means we get it more and more accurate in terms of what people required. The real interesting thing about the dashboard is predominantly when it was originally purchased, it was being purchased around the management of CareCERTs. Once it's been deployed, people now find so many more uses and add more and more value into what they're going to do with it going forward, which is great, because adding value is really what we're trying to do there. In terms of what we need to look at as we start to look at and we move towards the actual demonstration, it's important to understand the key components of what we're doing, and we need to take a full hardware inventory. We need to take a full software inventory of all your assets. We need to look at the Windows updates, Active Directory, and that's important for the reason which I'll go on to. We need to look at those network devices, vulnerability risk levels, looking at CareCERTs, and then obviously the output of those things into things like DSPT reporting and management reporting. But the real drive of this solution over the last 12 to 15 months has been trying to reduce the amount of resource that you need to apply to manage your estate and carry out this reporting. And that's important because today we find ourselves in a much more pressured environment. We have more people working remotely. We have more people within the IT team working remotely. So having this standardized view is important. But obviously the pressures that are upon us now are more than they were 2 years ago. And it's important that we get this view and this single truth view that we want to present in a second. So Let's look at the dashboard. Let's look at what it is and how it works. Just a quick run through of the kind of logic and the navigation, and then we'll go into some of the detail around the dashboard. So effectively what we see here is what we call our Windows Assurance tab. You'll see these tabs across the top. This is where we can kind of go single click between each area, and I'll go on to most of these as we go through the presentation. And then above that are these white links here, and this is kind of all the details under the bonnet. When the dashboard is deployed, either as a POC, which are free, and I'll come on to that towards the end, or as a live environment, we kind of carry out the same thing. We do all of the work. All we require at that point is a server, which we agree the spec with you, and again, it's a standard server. We can share those details later on. And a method of connection, and that's twofold. One is for us to do the deployment, and then once we've done that for any support purposes, but more importantly, there's an automated connection because we're updating information in your dashboards on a regular basis. Once that's in place, we get everything running, get it all scanning, so that the frequencies and those frequencies of scans can be different for different areas or different types of devices. As an example, Windows devices, you probably want to scan more frequently than network devices, and we can identify those risks. And then the dashboard starts to gather the information, because what we're really interested in from there on is how we trend that and what that looks like over time for things like performance monitoring. The general look and feel is the same throughout the dashboard, so it's very easy to navigate and to kind of explain that. Anything that's in red needs your attention, anything that's in blue is for information, and anything that's in grey over here on the right hand side doesn't need any attention, and they will all have zeros against them, so there's no activity there. To show you that this is a dynamic dashboard and we're not just relying, we're not just looking at a view, it's not a scene, we're not pulling information from other systems, although that we can do that. We're pulling information directly from the endpoints and all the native devices. If we were to look at this top one here, this workstations without antivirus, and the other thing to say is that the solution is agnostic. We don't really care, this dashboard doesn't care what you're running around AV or encryption or anything like that. We'll get that information and pull it back. So let's look at these 6 devices here without antivirus. We can click through into those and we can get to those devices. Now this is really powerful because it means for those people who are needing to look and remediate, they've got instant access to those devices. So what I could now do is take the package, and then we can automate some of that. I could deploy it onto the dashboard server. I could deploy the package, and then I could immediately rescan those assets that we were looking at. Hopefully they all disappear, but they may not. So maybe off network, there may be some issues in some of the connectivity, etc., etc. If I wanted to go further than that, I can click into the actual device, and I'm going to go through this in more detail towards the end, and there's a whole lot of labels up here that we can look at in terms of that, and then back up to that top level. So that's how we can get into that detail, and that applies anywhere through the dashboard. We can get directly into those areas of concern and deal with them very, very quickly. In terms of what we're looking at here, this is what we call our Windows Assurance tab, and we've put things into this view around the Windows environment and around the things that we've kind of learned and we've worked out in terms of best practice, the things that you might want to see. Please bear in mind that we can create any tabs at any time, and as part of the solution, there's a service wrapper that comes with that. You come back to us, say we'd like a view for this, so we'd like to know about that, or more detail about a particular asset or assets. We can create new widgets, or you can create them yourself. Some of our customers do create them themselves, and then we can sanity check them for you. So let's look at what we've got in this particular view. We've looked at desktop antivirus, workstations without AV, workstations with disabled antivirus, and then a complete total there. Below that, what's going on with ATP? Again, important, needs reporting back on those things. So what are the key things around ATP we need to know about, and what's for information? Drive encryption, particularly powerful as people are doing migration projects, but nevertheless, what's going on with your encryption? Where's it working, where's it not working, and some totals. And then below that, the first glimpse of our Windows updates around desktops on the left, and in the center around our servers, and I'll go into more detail about that later. As we float through the middle here, information around Windows update details, and then information around things that might stop an update taking place. Are automatic services not running on some devices? Do we have drive space problems on some devices? And then at the top, servers without AV. One interesting story around AV on servers is we sometimes find multiple agents running. So that's, we do find things quite often when the dashboard's deployed that are maybe not known about. One of the things that we use is WMI as an example. And in many cases on projects, we find WMI not working. What that looks like to us, it manifests itself by saying that we have, with the scanning errors, when we investigate them, we find out WMI is broken. That means it's not reporting to other things potentially as well within your estate. On the right-hand side here, we've got a high-level overview of Windows OSs and service packs, and then below that, Active Directory. Now, some people sometimes want to talk about this in more detail, and the reason why this is here is we need to know who's not been seen on the network for a certain period of time and devices, because that then starts to lead us into disabled devices, etc., and how you manage those and how we deal with those. Again, fail logons, no user password and password changes, and then below that here, another one that was added more recently, particularly around everyone shares and domain admins. And then below that, directly below that, is the first glimpse of our CareCERTs, and this is something I want to go into in more detail in the next few views. So that's our Windows Assurance tab. So let's take a look at these CareCERTs. We've had them around for a long time now, and they still come in sort of 4 flavors: low, medium, high, and critical. And it's the high and criticals are the ones that we know we need to report on within that 48-hour window. And I want to explain how we do that. So let's just look at the process of a CareCERT. CareCERT is derived by NHSD, usually driven by global CVEs of some description or some other vulnerability or advice that comes out, and that then turns into a CareCERT. It's then issued out, and then the thing that needs to happen locally is a determination of whether does that affect you in any way, shape or form. If it does affect you, how big is the risk and where are those devices? We're taking that data into our management console. We will then update all of our customers' dashboards instantaneously with a connection at the back end, a system connection, and we'll either then look. It will then be able to either look at the CareCERT against information it already knows, or the next rescan usually is around every 4 hours, and those scans are pulling back iterative information. Just as an example, if anybody's wondering, we're looking at a kind of 600K data file in the first instance, and then that kind of drops going on from there, and that's around a PC. We're then in a position, of the dashboard's in a position to be able to tell you if it's found any of those CareCERTs, and if it's found them, what does it look like? So let's take a quick look at this view. On the top left here, we've got this trending chart. We like to be able to trend things because, again, that shows you how you can performance manage. And at the top across the center here, we've got information around a monthly kind of tally around outstandings, totals, and resolved. And then below that, all of our CareCERTs. We immediately say green and red radio button. Is it resolved or is it not? And then looking across the line, the resolve status, is it resolvable? Because some aren't. We might find some medical devices as an example. You can't add AV. You can't go beyond a certain operating system or version number. We need to deal with those in a certain way, which I'll come on to. When it was issued, what the risk is, found, outstanding, has it been superseded? And then this note on the end here, which is all around our workflow for those devices that we might not be able to deal with straight away. So this is dynamic. Again, it's changing all the time. And anything in the dashboard, particularly around these, you can set alerts. So most people have alerts set against highs and criticals. What we also do as part of the service is, if those high and criticals get issued, then we will email the nominated people to say, we're aware of this, we've got this, it'll be in your dashboard within a certain period of time, usually within a couple of hours, and you can then obviously go and start having a look at what the impact is on you. But if you imagine, and again, I don't know how you deal with it locally, but if you can imagine what goes on locally, you can see how that amount of time in investigation is reduced to almost a minimum. Of course, what you've then got the ability to do, as we see here on the line, third line down, we found 807 devices and we've got 482 assets. Again, I can click directly through into that list and I can apply some remediation instantly at that point. In terms of those highs and criticals, we felt it important to add some workflow. Now, at the moment, we are talking to NHSD, but there is no mandate for them to collect this information automatically. The portal is there, and what normally happens is you will go onto the portal, put in the information about that particular CareCERT and what you're doing. So we introduced some workflow. This is your working environment, your working notes. So in this instance, we have a couple of radiology devices that can't be updated, and we need to change our status from outstanding. That means we've kind of registered that locally, we've done something about it, but if it's a higher critical, again, we need to do something and get that up to NHSD on the portal. Because there's no mandate, what we recommend people do here is copy and paste those notes into this box here, and then change the labels which mirror what goes on with there. So now we've got a local record of all of our highs and criticals. We can search on them, we can report on them at any moment in time, and that's local. It's not a spreadsheet, it's data-based, and it's there for obviously for historical review, should you need to do that. We can also filter on any of these CareCERTs at any time, so we can go by month or by risk or by status, etc., etc. Again, it means we've got that complete history over time of what we're doing, it means you've always got that view. And as I say, it is dynamic. At any time, you can get into the actual CareCERT information. What is the CareCERT? What are the platforms? What is the remediation? And again, makes it nice and easy. We can also link out to the CareCERT on the NHSD website, should we choose to do that. If you're the person that's dealing with those CareCERTs on a day-to-day basis, we split the screen. So on the left-hand side, we have all of our outstandings, and on the right-hand side of all of our resolved ones. Now this, as I say, is dynamic, so these will move around. So if I was off work for the next 4 weeks and I came back and I connect my machine, first thing that will happen is it would tell us, that the dashboard would tell us that there's been a device that's been off network for some time and it's now reconnected. And we'd also see if I've got any CareCERTs or vulnerabilities that are outstanding. And this would appear as a machine or an outstanding over here as a number 1, and we can go through the process. So very easy to manage, taking all of that pain. And really, what we're doing with the dashboard now is we're trying to ensure that you can see the problem, see how big it is, know how to deal with it, and apply the right resource at the right time. At a time when we know that the busyness of all departments has increased. That's CareCERTs. However, CareCERTs are driven by CVEs, global CVEs, and those CVEs, it's important that we take stock of them as well and give you visibility. So this is the software vulnerability by asset. We're all working on a hardware vulnerability by asset one as well. It's taking a little bit longer to get into the dashboard. But what this is showing is CVE related vulnerabilities. In the live version, should you look at the prediction value version, this is red, amber, green, and that's based on the risk levels at the side here. So let's take a quick look at what we've got here. We've got software in terms of what it is. We've got the vendor. We've got the install version. We've got how many CVEs affect that particular install, what the risk level is, and how many installations you have. Again, we can jump in and look at the detail, or we can go in and find that device and do that remediation there and then. So we've now got CareCERTs, which is driven by NHSD, and we've got global vulnerabilities. Now at this point, I want to share something with you because we have a really exciting development coming up. And if you're familiar with what goes on with things like EDR solutions or with an ATP or whatever your AV vendor may provide for you at that level, they're things about what has happened. So if a malware attack happens, you've got the ability to diagrammatically see what's happened and how it could have affected you and then how it's been stopped. What we're going to be doing is we're going to effectively diagrammatically represent the attack vector that could happen in relation to CVEs. It's like battle planning for vulnerabilities. And a good example would be you might have a server with a vulnerability. That server could be connected to a multiple array of other devices. And what we want to know is where do we apply our resources first to stop downstream vulnerabilities taking effect? Well, clearly that server needs to be fixed first. Fix the server, gives us that we can then go on to fix other things downstream further on. So that's a really exciting development that we're going to see come on stream next year. But this is all about, again, giving you the focus and that laser focus and giving you information about how to handle those vulnerabilities and other things around the estate that you need to think about and doing it in a timely manner. So while we're talking about things like patching, again, in concert with all of the other tabs we've been looking at, let's look at what goes on with Windows patching. Again, I don't know what you use today. There's an array of different products out there for looking at patching and updates, but we've brought this information and split the screen so you've got a real clear view of what's going on, both in terms of desktops on the left and servers on the right. Again, red, amber, green, just to kind of explain the color coding. In this instance, and out the box, anything within 30 days is green, 30 to 90 days is amber, and above 90 days is red. Those parameters can be changed. If your update and your statuses are different to that, then we can change that to match yours locally. So this is always giving you true representation. We've arranged this one in a domain view to kind of give the coloration here, but obviously I would expect to find more red in the server side. Now again, we can click through into these servers, and we can get to them to carry out any analysis. And in the early days of a solution, we do tend to find that we will have some debate around some servers that the server team may think have been patched and are updated, but actually the dashboard is saying that it isn't. The dashboard to date, within the last 2.5 to 3 years, hasn't been wrong. There has been a debate, and the debate gets down to a number of different things. How are the updates happening, or has there been a problem when that last reboot happened, as an example? So this becomes a real primary view for that, and that's why the server teams love this when they really get to grips with it. We can do correlation with SCCM, and of course, bear in mind that we are agentless, so we're watching the agent here as well. We take a good stock of that, and if we need to do some gap analysis with SCCM, then that can be carried out as well. Now, in terms of DSPT, this is a real area of focus for us, and this view here, although it says Sophos Central, we're a big Sophos partner, and this was the first piece of work we did. And what we have to bear in mind is when we're looking at things like DSPT, it requires a whole load of information to be supplied as part of that submission. And how do we get to that detail? AV is a really interesting one, because within the AV component, within DSPT, we have to give information around things like which components have been used, what versions are running, etc., licensing information. Now, any AV vendor, they design for a global market. They don't design for the NHS. And this information will reside in number of different places. In the endpoint, and it will also reside in the central console. So this is a way, whether it's Sophos or whether it's Defender or other products, McAfee or others out there, in which we can bring this information together, in a single view, to show you things like cleans and detections, and areas where we've got computers with alerts, clients that are up to date or out of date, things that have not been seen on the network. So it's adding more color to what you get from your AV console, but then this DSPT reporting piece. And what I'm going to show you now is the logic that we're going to use around DSPT reporting going forwards. So if you think about all of the assertions that are there and all of the reference points that we need to report upon, they're in that document that I mentioned earlier, 81% of the cyber mandatory requirements. We effectively are going to create views with links on that relate to those points. Those links will then link you directly to the content. So effectively, I've just clicked on the AV one, and here's all the information I would probably need to submit in terms of that report requirement. So if you were to extend that logic into all of those assertions, they'll be available as clicks. This can be exported. So I should have said earlier, you can export any information at any time from the dashboard. It's your information, it's on your network. And that's a good example of how we will go forward with DSPT. And that's certainly very high on our agenda with regards to our roadmap, as I mentioned earlier. Hopefully that makes sense. I mentioned Active Directory earlier, and again, Active Directory used probably by every NHS organisation in the country, but not that many people tend to trend it or look at what's going on. It's a great product and it does its job. We found that we needed to be able to provide reports around users and computers. A good example of that is I might not be using my computer. I could be using somebody else's device, and therefore, where is my device? Is it in a cupboard? Is it vulnerable, etc., etc. What's going on with failed logons, as an example? If we saw spikes in that, could mean a brute force attack, something similar. Again, really good to report on. And then things like new users created, new computers found. One thing to mention is that we're looking for domain and non-domain machines, and we obviously will report on what we find. And again, alerts can be set. We had a great example last year where a non-domain machine was being plugged into a trust network on an infrequent basis. It was actually belonging to somebody from outside the organization, and that machine was an XP device. That trust had given their assurances to their own board, to NHSD, they had no XP on their network. And in their words, not mine or ours, they said they would have not found that device had they not had the dashboard. So their words, not ours. But you get a feel for how powerful this is. Again, these were added more recently around admin logons, domain admins, and everyone shares. That's a Cyber Essentials Plus requirement, and then some compliance information here. But then we graph this both in here, live, and in those reports, which I'm going to come on to in a few moments. I mentioned earlier that one of the great and really powerful things is when the dashboard is then shared across departments and they see it alongside other tools they may use. So this could be a view around, around the computer discovery that the desktop team may use as an example, and it gives them a lot of granular information around the domains, information around those desktops that are running, antivirus, ATP, encryption, operating systems, chassis, models of types of devices, OS and service pack overview, version overview, how to build OSs, all in a single pane. And again, as I said before, we once we're into production environment, we can tailor these. Really good example is a customer that came to us quite recently saying this particular gentleman who's the cyber manager for two big trusts said that he needed to create a specific report twice a month. So we asked him for the data items. We built a view. So we got a live view of that information. Let's call it Chris's view as an example. And then we did a scheduled report which ran twice a month, and that sent information to him via an email link which he could then get to, and he had all that data to then play with. We are finding that more and more people are looking at reporting in a slightly wider way, so you can take any information out of the dashboard at any time. So therefore, if you're using Power BI or other tools like that and you want to use it in that way, then again, that information's there and we'll support you with that kind of approach. I said earlier that we need to take stock of all our assets, and all of you will probably run some asset management kind of software. We haven't designed it to replace that, but we do need to be able to take a full stock of all of the software and hardware assets, which I'll come on to. Some people are now looking at it into the dashboard and saying, well, actually, we maybe don't need to renew our software asset management tool. We pay a lot for it and we don't use all the functionality. In here, we can see what's going on, or we can add in our licensing information, and we can use that. So we didn't design it for that, but it will provide that ITAM kind of purpose. In here, this is where we see all of our software assets. We can now see things coming out outside of the Microsoft environment, as an example. We can start to see things like unauthorized software, unrated software, and below that here, all of our software publishers. And then above this here, we can see things like unauthorized software that create an exception list. That then starts to help as you start to build out Windows 10, etc. What is authorized, what isn't. And then we can also add in other things in here, like changes in the last 7 days, SQL additions, or things that you may want to have in there that will be important to you. In the same way, we need to take a full stock of all of our hardware assets. So on the left here, by manufacturer, and in the center by asset type. Now in here is where we start to think about medical devices. They come in all shapes and flavors and sizes. There are also a number of ways of how you protect those. So these can be created as new groups, and then we apply those devices that we find as medical devices, because they could be coming up at the moment as a PC, as an example. We put them into this container, we can then start and manage them, or we can steam it away and set certain parameters around them. So again, medical device is something that's a growing requirement. Now from here, what I want to do is just take us on a little journey in terms of how this tool can be used for investigation. So we've seen all the great things with that kind of high level view. And what I'm going to do is just look at my switches. So I click on my switches, and here I see my switches. You'll have many more than this, and I want to look at a particular switch. It's in a particular location, and then I want to look at a particular interface, and I want to get down to a particular PC. And again, real life story here. I went to a meeting with a colleague about 18 months ago. The gentleman at the trust said they thought they got some remnants of WannaCry left on a machine. The first protocol for us, they were running a very clever AV solution with anti-ransomware, etc. We just looked for devices that didn't have AV. We found 3 devices, and we then did more investigations by drilling down within the dashboard, and we did actually find that there were 3 devices. We were able to tell them what they were, when they were last used, and in which location they existed, and then they could carry on from there. And it's again really powerful. So we can see here summary information around this particular PC, and then we can click through these tabs at the top here to get more information. We can see all of the updates that have been applied to that device. We can see all of the software that's on that device. We can see a heat map of when it was on, when it was in standby. So we start to think about the use of this for sometimes for things like forensics. You can start to say, well, what was that person doing at that moment in time? And then we can see all those users that are connected to that device as well. We're also finding some people are scanning documents in and using it for full kind of asset management through the life cycle of the device. And finally, in this view, there's a new view here, so I can't show you today, which is security view. What we've seen so far is a top-down view, all of the things that could affect you, looking at all the devices it affects. The security view, or what we call inside out, will show you all of the vulnerabilities that affect that particular machine. And then we come back up to our top level view. So that kind of ends the presentation into the live dashboard. As I say, quick recap, sitting on your network, on a server, running 24/7, 365, gathering all this information, firing off alerts where you need it, and then giving you that visibility. And when we talk about visibility, what we're talking about here is stepping through that kind of DSPT, Cyber Essentials, and that cyber maturity model. Visibility is the first step on that, and then how you address that is the most important part, and focusing your resource on what you need to do. What I'd like to do now is look at this reporting component I mentioned earlier. As I said, this report is created on the server. It's then effectively emailed to you or nominated people, and it's designed as a high-level overview. The top page gives you a summary of the key areas that we've learned and have worked with organisations so far across that 100 organisations to understand what they need to know about. But actually, that report contains a whole raft of pages and information, and this is kind of a snapshot. Now, we're aware that these come out the first week of every month, and you may want to, your cyber assurance board meeting may be towards the back end of the month. So what we're looking at now is the ability in the dashboard to give you that single click button to regenerate this report when you need to do that. And we've had feedback to say that's really important. The other thing we've done in the latest round of report editions is we've added percentage completion against a number of those things that are important. So things like CareCERTs, from a management reporting point of view, what you want to see is how close are we to getting those CareCERTs completed and finished off. So those things are, and that then leads into the be able to do things like grading. So benchmarking and grading, which is something again that's in the pipeline. So these reports are really powerful, say sent out on a monthly basis to you, and making sure that you've got that as a kind of a management overview. Just make sure I've not missed anything. I didn't mention MDM integration, sorry about that. We've got that capability, not with all of the vendors, but a growing number of them. That gives you more visibility into the actual devices that are connected, if they're not directly on your network. I think I mentioned most of the things. Performance monitoring is one that's coming up more and more. Warranty, you probably saw in one of those views as well. But effectively, a lot of information going on there. One thing on there down the bottom there, other device interrogation, webcams, uninterruptible power supplies. So we've had some really interesting stories about when we first connected and done that initial scan. And we do find things like devices that have got default passwords still on them, never been changed. And we've had things like UPSs, in fact, even had a network attached generator, would you believe, in the early days. So just to kind of come to a close, again, I'll just kind of reiterate, we've got quite a lot of customers now. Again, they cover all different types of NHS organisations, which is really powerful. Again, if you want to speak to any of these, let us know, and we can put you in contact. No presentation would be without testimonials. So again, I won't labour these, but obviously this has been recorded now, so we can send the recording out, and you can look at this in your own time, and a few more there. And again, those case studies are available if you want them. Just a final few things, just to finish off. We've got it's based on a subscription basis, and we work with assets. We will talk to you about what those assets look like. We've got some customers only look at and manage their Windows-based assets, and people do everything. And we've got sites that start at 2,500 now to the largest, I think, about 60,000. We talk about it as a managed approach, where we're kind of helping you to look at those proactive and reactive things. Obviously, multiple year contracts if you want to do that, and frameworks. But the most important thing I would want to leave you with as a takeaway is the free POC. All we need is a server. We have a document that we complete with you, and we run that initially for 30 days. At the end of 30 days, we'll cut one of those reports I showed you just now. And if you then are saying, yeah, we really like this, it's going to be really valuable, we can then extend that normally up to a maximum of 60 days, but it really gives you a good feel of how it might help you and how you can build out a business case. So please take that as a takeaway. We're more than happy to do that. So I'm kind of at the end of my presentation now. I'm just going to have a quick look to see if we've got any questions. I can't see any questions in there at the moment. I'll give it a few more minutes to see if anybody's got anything they want to type in there. Okay, I can't see any coming through, so that's absolutely fine. Hopefully I've done a good enough job and answered them all for you. If there are any questions, then what we'll be doing after this event is we'll be sending out just a quick thank you email with a link to the recording. But on the way out, I think you saw you'll have seen a survey that we'd like to get completed if possible. I know some of you may have done that yesterday, but if you can do that on the way out, if you didn't do it, that would be really helpful. But can I just say thank you for joining, and hopefully that's been really helpful. And if you need anything, let us know. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Oh, I see we've got a question there. Okay, it's around the Landsweeper part. Yeah, one of the components underneath this is a Landsweeper engine. We include the Landsweeper license in the dashboard, so we would cover that off. But I can't remember the actual naming conventions now because they have changed, but it is included in the dashboard as part of that. You don't need to buy anything separate.